My daughter-in-law accidentally sent my son's lunchbox to my office. I showed it to a colleague as a joke. He immediately went pale and told me to take my son to the hospital right now. Why? I asked. I can't explain it to you now, he said. It's something terrible. Do as I say or your son won't survive. What I discovered at the hospital chilled me to the bone. It's great that you're here. If you're watching this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of vengeance from. I want to know how far it's traveled. On a Monday morning at my house in Washington, D.C., things were as busy as ever. The sound of pots and pans clanging in the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the light scent of a perfume sample I'd left on the dining table all blended together. I was rushing around getting ready for the office to oversee the new perfume production line, the pride and joy of my life. My son, Benjamin, was already dressed in a crisp suit, preparing for an important meeting at the financial firm where he was a managing director. Watching my boy comb his hair in front of the mirror filled me with pride. Benjamin was everything I had, my only child whom I had dedicated my entire life to raising and loving. In the kitchen, Clara, my daughter-in-law, was busy preparing our lunches. She'd been up since early, with her long hair pulled back in a ponytail. As she stirred a pan, she chatted on the phone with her friends. Her voice was a cheerful chatter full of laughter, but her hands moved with a practiced ease, packing food into 2 containers, a large one for Benjamin and a smaller one for me. I stood in the doorway, watching her with a warm feeling in my heart. What a thoughtful girl you are, my dear. You don't just take care of your husband, you take care of your mother-in-law too, I said, unable to hide my smile. Clara turned around, her eyes sparkling, and smiled faintly. I just want everyone to eat well, Mom. Eating out isn't safe anymore. Her words touched me deeply. I had always seen Clara as a daughter, my beautiful and lively daughter-in-law who always knew how to take care of the family. As we were getting ready to leave, Clara rushed to give me the small container while putting the large one in Benjamin's car. I carefully placed the container in my bag, thinking about how incredibly attentive she was. Clara was a family woman. She always made me feel at ease. I walked out the door, not realizing that a lunchbox would change everything in my life. At lunchtime, my office was as lively as usual. The younger employees gathered around the break room table, laughing and gossiping about their spouses and children. I opened my bag and pulled out the container, but immediately noticed something was wrong. This wasn't the small container Clara had prepared for me. It was the large one, Benjamin's. I laughed and shook my head. Clara is more scatterbrained than her old mother-in-law, I thought, believing it was just a cute mix-up. When I opened the lid, I noticed the rim of the container had some small white crystals, like sugar. How strange! A savory dish with sugar on the rim, I muttered, both curious and amused. The employees nearby crowded around and teased me. Ma'am, the rim of your container looks like a frosted margarita glass. The whole office burst into laughter. The atmosphere was as cheerful as a small party. I picked up the container and took it to David, my closest colleague. He had been a doctor before retiring and now worked as a workplace safety consultant for my perfume company. David was always the person I trusted most, the one I shared all the little stories of my life with. Look at this, I said, laughing and showing him the container. Clara is so young, but she's already more absent-minded than me. She cooked a savory dish for her husband and put sugar on the rim of the container. Maybe she thinks Benjamin works so hard that she wants him to gain weight. I joked, expecting him to roar with laughter like everyone else. But David didn't laugh. He took the container, tilted it under the fluorescent office light, and gently rubbed the rim with his finger. Suddenly, his face went pale, and he squinted as if he had just seen something horrible. "Who prepared this meal for him?" he asked in a serious, low voice. I frowned, a little confused. My daughter-in-law, as usual. She prepares lunch for my son and me to take to work. Today, she accidentally gave me Benjamin's container. "Why?" I responded, trying to remain calm, even though a terrible premonition was beginning to creep over me. David didn't answer right away. He looked at me with eyes full of concern and suddenly said in a loud, urgent tone that startled me, "You need to take your son to the hospital right now." His words were like a direct stab to the heart. I froze, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice. The laughter and chatter in the office abruptly stopped. A deathly silence fell over everything. The young employees looked at each other, bewildered, not understanding what was happening. I tried to keep my composure and asked again, "Why? Explain to me, David. What's going on?" But he just shook his head. His voice trembled. "I can't explain it to you now. It's something terrible. Do what I say or your son won't survive." I felt my heart shatter. Benjamin, the son I had protected my entire life, the boy I loved more than myself, was in danger. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to believe it. But the gravity in David's voice stopped me from doubting. I turned to him, struggling to keep my voice from breaking. "Are you serious? This isn't a joke, is it?" David took my hand. His eyes were red. "I swear to you, I would never joke about something like this. Those white crystals are not sugar. You have to act now." His words were like an alarm bell that woke up all my senses. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but my mother's instinct told me that something was very, very wrong. The container was still there on the table, a silent warning. I looked at it, then at David, and for a moment, I felt like the whole world was collapsing at my feet. David practically pushed me out of the office. His voice was urgent and full of anguish. "Go now. You can't waste a second." He already had his phone in hand, calling a contact in the toxicology department at the University of Maryland Medical Center. His voice trembled, but it was clear. "I need you to analyze a sample immediately. It's a matter of life or death." I stood there clutching the container, my mind in chaos. Just a few minutes ago, I was joking about the white crystals on the rim. And now, that container felt like a bomb that could destroy my entire world. I carefully put it in a plastic bag as if I were handling evidence of a crime. "I'm going right now," I told David, hardening my voice to hide the fear growing inside me. He nodded with a serious look. "I'll see you at the hospital. Don't let anyone touch that container." I called my personal driver, Mr. Jones, who had worked for my family for over 20 years. When I told him to drive straight to the medical center, he looked at me through the rearview mirror with curiosity, but didn't ask any questions. "Faster, Jones," I said hoarsely. During the ride, I sat in the back seat, clinging to the plastic bag, my gaze fixed on the window. The streets of Washington, D.C. were as bustling as ever, with yellow cabs whizzing by, street vendors shouting from the sidewalks, and the bright sun reflecting off the glass buildings. But everything seemed far away, as if I were in another world, one where there was only me and the terror of what was about to happen. When we arrived at the hospital, I walked into the reception area, still clutching the plastic bag. The young nurse with thick-rimmed glasses looked up, surprised, when I said, "I need you to analyze a container of food. There's something strange in it." She blinked as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing, but then the phone on her desk rang. I vaguely heard David's voice on the other end of the line, and the nurse nodded, jotting something down quickly. "All right, ma'am. Please wait a moment. The sample will be taken to the lab immediately." She said this in a professional tone that couldn't hide her curiosity. I just nodded, too weak to explain more. An employee in a white lab coat took the sample, and I was guided to a waiting room down the hall. The hallway of the University of Maryland Medical Center was full of people, of hurried footsteps, of the monotonous sound of the PA system calling out patients, and the smell of disinfectant hanging in the air. I sat down, clasping my hands together, trying to stay calm, but every minute that passed felt like an hour. I looked at the clock on the wall. The minute hand moved with an exasperating slowness, as if mocking my patience. In my mind, images of a young Benjamin appeared, running through the park, holding my hand. Older Benjamin on the podium, receiving his college diploma with a radiant smile. And even more recently, when he complained of feeling tired, rubbing his stomach with a weak voice. "It must be the stress from work, Mom." I had thought it was just stress, like any other young man, but now, David's words echoed in my head. or your son won't survive." I felt my heart tighten. How could this be? Who would want to harm Benjamin, my good, hard-working son? I took out my phone and dialed Benjamin's number. It rang, but he didn't answer. I knew he was in an important meeting, but the silence on the other end of the line made my heart clench. I left him a message, my fingers trembling as I typed. "Benjamin, you have to get a medical checkup today in secret. Don't tell anyone, not even your wife." I pressed send and stared at the screen, waiting for a response, but nothing came. I told myself to calm down, but the anxiety was building like a wave about to drown me. Finally, after an eternity, a young doctor came out of the lab. He wore a name tag that read, Dr. Ethan Miller. His face was serious, but his gaze was kind. "You're the person who brought in the food container, right?" he asked, holding a sheet of paper. I nodded, my heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest. He sat down next to me and said in a slow but clear voice, "We analyzed the food sample. It contains arsenic. It's an extremely toxic substance that, if consumed continuously for a long period, can cause damage to the stomach, liver, and kidneys, and can even lead to death." I listened to his words, paralyzed. The word arsenic echoed in my head as sharp as a blade. I was stunned, unable to say anything. I just stared at the doctor, hoping I had heard wrong. But Ethan continued, his voice growing more serious. "Symptoms like fatigue, abdominal pain, and nausea match perfectly with chronic poisoning. If your son has been eating this food for a long time, there is a high risk that he has been poisoned." My mind reeled. Suddenly, I remembered the times Benjamin complained of fatigue, the nights he sat on the couch rubbing his stomach with a pale face. "It must be the pressure from work," he used to say, and I had believed him. I even took him to a doctor, but they only prescribed vitamins and recommended rest. How could I have ever imagined that in those carefully prepared lunches, a deadly poison was hidden every single day? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin, trying not to fall apart right there. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. Ethan nodded. He placed a hand on my shoulder as if to comfort me, and then left. I walked out of the hospital, feeling like my feet weighed a ton. Sitting in the car, I hugged the plastic bag that held the container as if it were the final proof of a terrifying truth. The streets of Washington, D.C. were still noisy with the sound of car horns and people's laughter, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. In my head, only one question repeated over and over. Who did this? Who would want to harm Benjamin? And then a thought chilled me to the bone. Clara, my daughter-in-law, the one who had prepared the food, the person I had always trusted, the one I loved like a daughter. No, it couldn't be, I told myself. Clara was always so attentive. She took care of Benjamin with every meal, every moment. But then the image of the white crystals on the rim of the container came to my mind, and David's voice echoed, "It's something terrible." I took out my phone and checked the message I had sent to Benjamin. Still no response. I wanted to call again, but I stopped my hand. If it was Clara, I couldn't let her suspect anything. I needed time to investigate, to protect my son. Sitting in the car, I looked out the window. The sunset light reflected off the skyscrapers, but in my heart, there was only darkness. Benjamin was everything I had. I had lost my husband 10 years ago, and I had built the perfume brand all by myself to leave to my son. I couldn't lose him. I couldn't. That afternoon, I couldn't go straight home. My mind was still in a state of chaos after what Dr. Miller had told me at the University of Maryland Medical Center. I needed answers, a clue to understand why this nightmare was happening to Benjamin. I decided to drive directly to the office of Mr. Harrison, my personal attorney, who had helped me with all the legal matters of my perfume brand for over 20 years. If there was anyone who understood my assets and my wishes, it was him. When I entered his office, Mr. Harrison was sitting behind his desk with his gold-rimmed glasses, carefully reading a file. When he saw me, he looked up and gave me a kind smile. "Mrs. Wallace, what a surprise to see you here without an appointment. Is something important going on?" I sat down in the leather chair in front of him, getting straight to the point. Mr. Harrison, I need you to review my will and all the documents related to my estate right now. My voice sounded firmer than I expected, as if I were trying to hide the storm of emotions I felt inside. Mr. Harrison frowned but didn't ask any more questions. He stood up, opened a filing cabinet, and took out a thick folder. "This is the last draft you signed last year," he said, placing the papers in front of me. I went through the pages one by one. The dry words about properties, real estate, and company shares paraded before my eyes. But when I reached the section on the distribution of the inheritance, I felt my blood run cold. In the will, I had clearly stipulated that my assets would be divided equally between Benjamin and Clara, my son and my daughter-in-law, whom I had always considered a daughter. But there was a clause that made me shudder. If one of them passed away before me, the survivor would automatically inherit the entirety of the assets. In other words, if Benjamin died, Clara would become the sole heir. I looked up at Harrison. My voice trembled. And if I'm still alive, could she obtain anything? Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. His voice was serious and clear. "If you are still alive, you continue to own the perfume brand and have every right to change the will at any time. But if Benjamin were to pass away before you, his personal assets, the properties, the investments, would gradually pass into Clara's hands. When you pass away, legally, it's the shortest path for her to get everything." He paused, looking at me to make sure I understood the weight of his words. I nodded, but inside, everything was collapsing. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fit together, and the picture that was forming left me frozen. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about Clara. She had always been the perfect daughter-in-law in my eyes. Beautiful, attentive. She always knew how to make me happy. But now, my memories of her felt distorted. I remembered the times she discreetly asked me about the value of the house in Milan, or her casual questions about my investment projects in the Hamptons. Once, during dinner, she let it slip. "If you're not in charge someday, I'll continue to develop the brand, won't I, Mom? I promise I'll do a great job." At the time, I just smiled, thinking it was the concern of a dedicated daughter-in-law. But now, that phrase echoed in my head, sharp as a warning. Could Clara have planned everything for a long time? Could she have seen Benjamin and me not as her family, but as obstacles on her path to an immense fortune? When I arrived home, it was almost dark. The yellow light of the porch illuminated Clara's figure sitting in a wicker chair, checking her phone. She looked up and smiled at me, as radiant as ever. "You're home, Mom. I just booked an appointment at the spa for the weekend. Do you want to come with me? They have an incredible relaxing massage package." Her voice was soft and carefree, but it no longer gave me the same warmth. I looked into her eyes, trying to find some sign, a hint of doubt, a glimmer of guilt, but I saw nothing but that perfect smile. "I have a commitment, my dear. You go with your friends," I replied dryly, quickly entering the house. I didn't want her to see my hands trembling or the fury and pain I was trying to suppress in my gaze. In the living room, I sank onto the couch and put my hands on my head. My heart was torn. Part of me refused to believe that Clara, the girl I had welcomed into my family with open arms, could do something so monstrous. But the other part, a mother's reason, screamed at me that I had to protect Benjamin, even if it meant facing the cruelest truth. I remembered the first days when Benjamin brought Clara home to introduce her. She was shy. She held Benjamin's hand and told me, "I promise I'll take good care of him, ma'am." I believed her. I thought I was lucky to have a daughter-in-law like her. But now, each of those memories was like a knife plunging into my heart. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, as if a rock were crushing my dreams. My sleep hadn't helped at all. I only had nightmares of Benjamin, the container, and Clara's smile, a smile I no longer knew if it was real or a mask. I put on a dark blue blouse, the color Benjamin once said made me look powerful, and drove to his office downtown. I didn't warn him. I just sent a short message. "I need to see you right now." On the way, I tried to stay calm, but my hands were gripping the steering wheel, soaked in sweat. I knew this conversation would change everything, but I couldn't postpone it any longer. Benjamin had to know the truth. When I arrived, Benjamin had just come out of a meeting. His jacket was a little wrinkled, but his smile was still radiant when he saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here without warning? Are you here to see if I'm working hard?" he joked in his usual light-hearted tone. Seeing my son there, so healthy and carefree, broke my heart. How was I going to tell him that the woman he loved, the person he trusted most, might be plotting to kill him? But I had no choice. "Benjamin, come to your office with me. It's something important," I said, with a seriousness I hadn't intended. He frowned. His smile faded, but he nodded and led me to his private office. The office was spacious, with a large window overlooking the bustling city. Benjamin sat down and motioned for me to take a seat in front of him. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Why so serious? Is there a problem with the perfume company?" he asked, still thinking it was a normal conversation. I didn't respond immediately. I opened my purse and took out the folder with the lab results from the University of Maryland Medical Center and the copy of the will that Mr. Harrison had given me the day before. I placed them on the desk, pushed them towards him, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Read it, Benjamin," I said, my voice filled with contained emotion. Benjamin took the documents and began to turn the pages. His expression quickly changed from indifference to confusion and then to a deathly paleness. When he read the lab results, I saw his hands trembling, making the paper rustle. "Arsenic in my food." He looked up, his eyes wide as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and told him everything. How I had confused his container with mine, the white crystals on the lid, David's warning, and the lab results that confirmed the presence of a deadly poison. I told him slowly, detail by detail, as if by speaking quickly, I couldn't bear the weight of the truth. Benjamin remained paralyzed, still clinging to the papers. He shook his head over and over, as if wanting to reject it all. "It can't be, Mom," he said, his voice choked. "Clara loves me. She loves our family. She cooks for me every day. She takes care of every detail. How could she?" His voice trailed off, and I saw his eyes redden. Seeing my son like that tore me apart. I wanted to hug him, to tell him it was all a misunderstanding, but the evidence was in front of us. I couldn't lie to him or to myself. I let Benjamin absorb the shock and then said in a slow but firm voice, "I know it's hard to believe, son. I don't want to believe it either, but the evidence is here. And do you remember how your health has been these past few months? The times you complained of fatigue, stomach pain, nausea? I thought it was because of work, but now I know it wasn't." I paused and looked him in the eyes. "Benjamin, I can't lose you. You need to face this truth, no matter how painful it is." Benjamin lowered his head, covering his face with his hands and closing his eyes tightly. I knew he was trying to connect the dots. The nights he came home exhausted, the times Clara brought him a glass of orange juice, or the meals she prepared for him with a tender smile. Suddenly, he slammed his hand down on the table, startling me. "If this is true," he said, his voice trembling with rage, "then she not only betrayed me, but she wants to steal your legacy and destroy our family." I saw a pain mixed with determination in his eyes, as if he had just realized that the life he believed in had been shattered by the person he loved. I took his hand and squeezed it tightly. "You and I have to cooperate with the police," I said with a determined voice. "We can't face her alone. If we stay silent, you'll be in more danger." Benjamin looked at me. His eyes wavered between pain and doubt. I knew he still loved Clara, that he still wanted to believe there was some explanation. But then he took a deep breath and nodded. His eyes reddened. "Mom, I'll do what you say. Let's unmask her. I can't let you suffer another loss." That same afternoon, Benjamin and I went to the precinct to see Inspector Carter, whom I had met at a business seminar a couple of years ago. The inspector was a middle-aged man with graying hair, a serious voice, and a penetrating gaze. We sat in a small office with white walls that smelled of coffee. I told him the whole story, from the lunchbox to the lab results, while Benjamin added details about his health. Inspector Carter listened attentively, taking notes and nodding from time to time. "This is a very serious case," he said, in a serious tone. "We'll take the container as evidence and plan to install cameras in your house to monitor her. We'll also need to analyze more food samples." He looked at me and then at Benjamin. "But both of you must keep this an absolute secret. We can't let the suspect know we're investigating her." Benjamin nodded, but I saw him clench his fists. "Understood," he said in a hoarse voice. I knew he was fighting with himself, with the love he once felt for Clara. When we left the precinct, Benjamin remained silent for a long time. We were in the parking lot amidst the hustle and bustle of Washington, D.C. I looked at my son, the young man I had raised, who now seemed to have aged 10 years in a single day. "Mom," he turned to me, his voice choked. "I never imagined that the person who slept next to me every night would want to kill me. But for you, for the brand, for our family, I'll be strong." I walked over and hugged him tightly. His body trembled, and I felt his pain mix with mine. "Son, I'm here," I whispered as tears fell silently. "We're going to get through this together." My heart was aching but filled with determination. From now on, we were no longer victims. We were going to turn the tables, and I would do anything to protect my son, no matter the cost. After leaving the precinct, Benjamin and I sat in the car. No one said a word for several minutes. The car's engine hummed monotonously, but inside me, everything was a whirlwind. We had just entered a war where the enemy was someone we had considered family. Benjamin looked out the window, his face tense, and his hands clenched on his knees. I knew he was struggling with himself, trapped between love and betrayal. "Mom," he finally said in a low voice, "how are we going to unmask her? I don't want to drag this out any longer." I nodded, feeling my determination grow. "We're going to make her lose her patience, Benjamin. If she really has a plan, she'll make a mistake." When we arrived home, I immediately called Inspector Carter to discuss the plan. He listened and then suggested in a firm voice, "Attack her motive, the money. If she's after the estate, make her believe the opportunity is slipping away. She'll panic and act rashly." His words were like a flash of light in my mind. I immediately thought of the will, something that seemed to interest Clara so much. If I made her believe that the fortune was about to slip through her fingers, she wouldn't be able to stay calm. "I know what to do," I told Carter, feeling like a strategist about to enter battle. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison, my lawyer. "Mr. Harrison, could you come to the house this afternoon? I want to discuss a new will," I said, making sure my voice was loud as Clara was nearby, arranging some flowers in the living room. I saw her stop for a moment. Her hands froze, but she quickly bent down, pretending to continue with her task. I knew she had heard me. That afternoon, when Harrison's car parked in front of the gate, I deliberately opened the main gate so Clara could see him clearly. She was on the porch saying goodbye to a friend, and her gaze slid toward the car with a curiosity she couldn't hide. In the living room, Mr. Harrison and I sat facing each other with the window open so our voices could be heard outside. I spoke in a loud, clear voice. "Mr. Harrison, I've thought about it a lot. In 1 month, I will officially change the will. I want to donate most of my estate to a charitable foundation to build an orphanage for abandoned children. They need that money more than my children do." Harrison, whom I had already briefed on the plan, nodded and played along. "That's a very noble idea, Mrs. Wallace. I'll prepare the documents immediately. What percentage of your assets do you wish to allocate?" I replied, deliberately emphasizing at least 80%. The perfume brand, the properties, everything. I want to leave a meaningful legacy. At that moment, I heard some quiet footsteps in the hallway. Clara walked by with a tray of fruit in her hands, but her steps clearly paused for a second. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye and saw her freeze for a moment, her eyes wide before she hurried on. My heart raced. She had heard it, and I knew it had touched on her greatest fear. When Harrison left, Clara accompanied him to the door with a forced smile on her lips that no longer felt natural. "Thanks for coming, Mr. Harrison," she said, but her voice trembled slightly, as if she were trying to hide something. That night, I decided to take the plan a step further. I organized a family dinner as I usually did to maintain a warm atmosphere. Benjamin sat next to me, and Clara sat across from us, smiling, but her eyes lacked their usual sparkle. As I served the wine, I mentioned the topic of the will again on purpose. I've thought it over carefully. The perfume brand is my life's work, but I want it to be tied to philanthropy. Donating my assets to the foundation is a way for me to feel at peace. Clara nodded, pretending to agree. "That's so noble of you, Mom." "I support you completely." But I saw her clench her wine glass, her red-painted nails digging into the glass. Benjamin played along with me in a gentle but meaningful tone. "That's right, Mom. It's so valuable that you're thinking about society. I also hope that in the future the brand will be associated with a humanitarian image." I glanced at Clara and saw her lower her head, her lips pressed together. At the end of dinner, Clara made an excuse. "I have a late appointment at the spa with a friend. I think I'll be home a little late." She got up, grabbed her purse, and left. I pretended to be busy clearing the table, but as I passed the garden, I heard her speaking on the phone in a low, rushed voice. "We can't wait another month. We have to act now." My heart stopped. I pretended to cough and went out into the garden as if by chance. Clara was startled and turned around, her eyes wide with panic. "My massage appointment was just changed to tomorrow morning. I'm a little tired today," she said, quickly changing her tone before hanging up. I smiled and nodded. "Are you tired, my dear? Then rest. Don't overexert yourself." But inside, I knew she was panicking. That night, as I went up to my room, I passed Clara's. The light was on, and her silhouette was projected on the curtain, pacing back and forth with the phone pressed to her ear. I stood in the hallway listening to her voice. It was a tense whisper. "I have to do something before that old lady signs the new will." I went back to my room, closing the door, my heart pounding 1,000 miles an hour. I knew it was the sign that her anxiety had reached its limit. In the days following that family dinner, the atmosphere in the house became tense. Although on the surface, Benjamin and I tried to maintain a sense of normality, inside, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, where every step had to be careful because the slightest mistake could ruin everything. One morning, as I was making coffee, Benjamin came into the kitchen looking tired. He sat down, rubbed his forehead, and said in a low voice, "Mom, the food Clara has been cooking lately tastes really weird. Yesterday's soup was a little bitter, and the orange juice had a cloudy white sediment. I'm not sure, but—" He trailed off, his gaze full of concern. His words were like a stab to the heart. I took his hand, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't eat anything she prepares for you. I'll take care of it." A few days earlier, Inspector Carter had secretly installed a camera in the kitchen, hidden in the corner of the pantry. He arranged for me to be in a small office near the precinct with a large screen to monitor everything. I sat there with him and another officer, my eyes glued to the monitor. The image was crystal clear. Clara was standing in the kitchen wearing an apron with her hair tied back. She opened a small glass bottle, tilted it slightly, and sprinkled a white powder into the pot of simmering soup. Her movements were slow and careful, as if she had done it hundreds of times. Her face was a mask of coldness, without a hint of doubt, without a trace of emotion. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into the wood until it hurt. I wanted to run in, to yell at her, but Inspector Carter put a hand on my shoulder and said in a low voice, "Easy, Mrs. Wallace. We need more evidence. She won't escape." I nodded, but I felt a fire burning inside me. Seeing Clara stir the soup with a faint smile on her lips made me feel like my world was crumbling. The daughter-in-law I had loved, the one I had trusted, was now a stranger, a danger lurking in my own home. I turned to Carter, my voice trembling. "Are you sure the camera is recording everything? I don't want her to have any opportunity to deny it." He nodded with a cold look. Everything is being recorded, every detail with clarity. That night, Benjamin ate the dinner Clara prepared, but I had told him to only pretend to try a little. As soon as he put the spoon down, he put his hands to his head, complaining of dizziness, and collapsed onto the couch. Clara ran to him, held him, and said with fake concern, "You've been working too much." "It must be stress. Let me get you a glass of water." I watched from a corner of the room. Her smile was tender, but her gaze was cold, as if she were evaluating whether her plan was working. I turned away, pretending to be busy with the dishes, but my heart ached like never before. Benjamin was acting so well, but I knew he was suffering too, not from the poison, but from the betrayal of the woman he had loved. A sample of the food from that dinner was secretly collected by the police to be analyzed. The next morning, Inspector Carter called me to his office. He handed me the sheet with the results. His voice was grave. "The arsenic concentration in the soup and orange juice is double that of the previous container." She panicked, probably because she was afraid of losing the inheritance after hearing you talk about the foundation. "She's accelerating the plan." I took the paper. I read every line, feeling my blood run cold. "Double," I muttered in disbelief. Clara didn't just want to harm Benjamin. She wanted to do it quickly, before I could change the will. Carter looked at me and said in a low voice, "You and your son must be more careful. She's losing control." From that day on, I started paying attention to every little detail. Every time Clara served juice, she always served Benjamin first, placing the glass carefully in front of him before serving me or anyone else. One time, I pretended to be thirsty and asked her to bring me a glass of orange juice. She moved nervously in the kitchen. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed me the glass. "Here you go, Mom," she said, but she avoided my gaze as if she feared I would discover something. I took the glass and smiled. "Thanks, my dear, but now I feel like having a glass of water instead." She froze for a moment and then nodded with a forced smile. Another night, Clara brought a bowl of soup and placed it in front of Benjamin with a look of concern. "Eat, my love." "I made this especially for you." I looked at Benjamin and gave him a signal with my eyes. He smiled weakly, but I spoke first. "I'm old now. I can only eat broth. Let your husband eat this soup." Clara stopped, the smile frozen on her lips. "Yes, of course," she replied, her voice a little broken, and she turned away quickly. I knew she was confused, and that gave me a strange relief mixed with pain. Every time I rejected her food, I felt like I was weaving another thread in the trap we had set. Benjamin continued with his act, becoming more and more convincing. At work, he rubbed his stomach on purpose, looking weak, which worried his colleagues. At home, he lay on the couch, sighing and complaining of fatigue. Clara looked at him with a glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes, as if she believed the poison was taking effect. Seeing that broke my heart. Benjamin was not just my son. He was my pride, the one who would continue my dream. Seeing him feigning pain to deceive the person who was trying to kill him filled me with pride and a deep sadness. Late that same night, as I was walking down the hallway, I heard Clara whispering on the phone. I stopped and pressed myself against the wall, trying to listen. "Just a few more days. After that, I'll be the only one who gets everything," she said in a low voice, but full of determination. I silently took out my phone. I activated the voice recorder and held it steady. When Clara's voice came through clearly, I knew I had another crucial piece of evidence. I returned to my room and sent the recording to Inspector Carter with a message. "We're almost at the end." The next morning, Inspector Carter summoned Benjamin and me to the precinct. When we walked in, he was sitting behind his desk with his penetrating gaze, but a calm voice. "We already have enough evidence to arrest her, but to make sure she can't deny it, we need a final blow. A fake death for Benjamin will make her drop her guard and confess her plan." I looked at Benjamin. I saw him clench his hands, his face tense. I knew he still loved Clara, but he nodded. "I'll do it. If we keep waiting, she'll continue. And you'll be in danger too, Mom." His words were like a knife in my heart. I was proud of my son's strength, but it pained me to see him suffer the agony of betrayal. I took his hand and said in a low voice, "I'm here, Benjamin. We'll get through this." Inspector Carter nodded and motioned for an officer to take us to a conference room to fine-tune the details. The plan was meticulously laid out. The police coordinated with the University of Maryland Medical Center to prepare a special room filled with hidden cameras in every corner. Dr. Laura Wilson, an old friend of Inspector Carter, agreed to help. She would create a fake medical file with a clear diagnosis of severe intoxication and cardiac arrest. To make it more convincing, Benjamin and I spent hours with her, planning every step. Benjamin would fake being poisoned after dinner, collapsing at the table. I would be the one to call the ambulance and give Clara the news of his death. Every detail was calculated, but the anxiety never left me. If Clara didn't react as we expected, if she suspected something, everything could fall apart. That night, the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Clara prepared dinner as usual. She served a bowl of fragrant soup and placed it in front of Benjamin. "Eat, my love." "I made this especially for you," she said, with a tender smile but a cold look. I looked at Benjamin and gave him a signal with my eyes. He nodded slightly. He took the spoon, pretended to try a little, and then put it down, grimacing. "I'm full tonight. I think I'll eat very little." Clara looked at him with a glimmer of disappointment but quickly hid it with a smile. "Well, then I'll save it for you to eat tomorrow." A few minutes later, Benjamin began his act. He clutched his stomach. His face turned pale, and his breathing became labored. "Mom, it hurts so much," he whispered before collapsing onto the table, knocking over a glass of water. I jumped up, screaming, "Benjamin, what's wrong?" My voice trembled. And it wasn't all acting. Seeing my son motionless, even though I knew it was fake, made my heart clench. Clara also jumped up, ran to him, took his hand, and cried out, "My love, wake up!" "What's wrong?" But the moment she leaned in, I saw a strange glint in her eyes. It wasn't concern, but a discreet satisfaction, as if everything was going according to plan. I took my phone in a hurry, pretending to call 911 in a panicked voice. "Please, come quickly." My son passed out. He's not breathing. Clara was by his side, covering her face and sobbing. "No, it can't be. He can't." But I realized that even though tears were falling, there was no real pain. I turned away, avoiding her gaze, fearing I wouldn't be able to hold back and scream the truth at her. A few minutes later, the sound of an ambulance siren filled the street. The paramedics, who were actually undercover police officers, loaded Benjamin onto a stretcher and quickly put him in the ambulance. Clara lunged forward, demanding to go with them. "I have to go with him." "I'm his wife." But an officer stopped her with a firm voice. "I'm sorry. Only one person can accompany the patient." I stepped forward. I took Clara's hand and pretended to comfort her. "You stay, my dear. I'll go with Benjamin. I'll let you know everything." She nodded, her eyes red, but I felt her hand tremble as if she were holding something back. I got into the ambulance. The door slammed shut and the vehicle took off. Sitting next to Benjamin, I took his hand and whispered, "You did great. Now it's my turn." He opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "I trust you, Mom." I felt a warmth in my heart, but also a great heaviness. I knew this charade would be the turning point, but also another wound in both our souls. At the University of Maryland Medical Center, everything was perfectly set up. Benjamin lay motionless on a bed connected to wires and machines. A monitor simulated a cardiac arrest, creating a terribly realistic scene. Dr. Wilson was by his side reviewing the fake file, and from time to time, she gave me a reassuring look. I sat by the bed, looking at my motionless son, and even though I knew it was all a lie, I couldn't stop my eyes from filling with tears. I thought of the years when Benjamin was little, when he ran in the garden holding my hand. Now he was here, as part of a plan to unmask the woman he once loved. I wiped away my tears, telling myself I had to be strong. I took out my phone and texted Clara. My hands trembled as I typed, Come to the hospital immediately. Benjamin didn't make it. I pressed send, feeling as if I had just thrown a rock into an abyss. Then I sat and waited, my heart in my throat. Every step in the hallway made me nervous. Inspector Carter was in a corner of the room, observing everything through the monitor of a hidden camera. He whispered, "You're doing great. Now we just have to wait for her reaction." About 40 minutes after I sent the message, hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway of the medical center. Clara appeared, her hair disheveled, one heel crooked, and her eyes so red it looked like she had forced herself to cry the whole way. She rushed to me, hugged me tightly, and cried, "It can't be, Mom." Benjamin was so young. Her voice broke, but I could feel the falsehood in every sound. I stood there rigidly, trying to play the part of a devastated mother. "Clara, calm down, my dear," I whispered. My voice choked, not by the acting, but by the rage and pain that consumed me. Seeing her cry like that made me want to scream, but I knew it wasn't the time yet. The play was continuing, and I had to maintain my role. Inspector Carter and 3 plainclothes officers were a short distance away, pretending to be passers-by, but I knew they were watching Clara's every move. One of them, wearing sunglasses, was discreetly recording with a small camera hidden in his clothes. Clara didn't notice a thing. She continued to hug me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, how could this have happened? I can't believe it," she sobbed. I nodded, patting her back, but inside, I only wanted to push her away and confront her with the truth. I guided her with a trembling voice. "Come see Benjamin one last time. He's in there." I led Clara to the special room where Benjamin lay motionless on the bed, covered with a sheet up to his chest. His face was pale, thanks to expert makeup. The machines around him simulated a cardiac arrest with faint beeps, creating a terribly realistic atmosphere. Clara approached. Her trembling hands touched Benjamin's. Her tears were pouring, but I noticed her gaze wasn't one of pain. It was one of relief, a strange glint, as if a great weight had just been lifted off her shoulders. My heart sank. How could she be there pretending to cry when she herself had caused all of this? Suddenly, Clara leaned in and whispered so low I could barely hear her. "Finally, it's over." She bit her lip instantly, as if realizing her mistake. But it was too late. The phrase was heard clearly, picked up by the hidden microphone in the room. I froze, feeling my blood turn to ice. And just at that moment, Benjamin opened his eyes and sat up abruptly in bed. Clara screamed and recoiled. "It can't be!" But I was so careful. Her voice was full of panic. Her eyes were wide with absolute terror, as if she were seeing a ghost. I stood there, my heart pounding 1,000 miles an hour, not knowing whether to feel relief or pain. Benjamin looked directly at Clara, his eyes full of anger and disappointment. "Careful?" he repeated, in a voice as cold as ice. "Careful to kill me?" "No!" Clara stumbled backward, clinging to the edge of the bed to keep from falling. "No, it's not that. You're misunderstanding," she stammered, but her trembling voice gave her away. Inspector Carter entered the room. His voice was firm. "We've heard enough, Miss Clara. You are under arrest for attempted murder." 3 other officers appeared behind him, blocking any exit. Clara turned, her face as white as paper. "No, it wasn't me," she cried, her voice breaking. "It was just a spice. I just wanted to give it more flavor." But Carter didn't let her continue. He held up a folder and a USB stick. His voice was calm but sharp. "Do you want to see the evidence? The video of you pouring a white powder into the soup? The lab results with arsenic? The recording of your call and what you just said a few seconds ago? It's all here." Clara stumbled as if her legs couldn't hold her. She looked at me, then at Benjamin, with a look of total panic. I didn't want to kill anyone," she murmured. But then, as if she couldn't bear the pressure any longer, she collapsed on the floor, covering her face and screaming, "I just wanted the money. I didn't want to do it, but that old lady was going to donate everything to charity. She didn't leave me a choice." That confession was like the final stab, confirming all my suspicions. I stood there looking at her, my heart torn between pain and relief. Pain for the betrayal of someone I had considered my daughter, and relief because the truth had finally come to light. Benjamin came closer, put his arm around me, and whispered, "Mom, we won." His voice was trembling but full of determination. I took his hand and squeezed it, feeling the warmth of my son's hand, a warmth I had almost lost forever. "Son, I'm so proud of you," I said as tears fell silently. Clara was still on the floor, her head bowed, her sobs mixed with the sound of the officer's footsteps as they approached to handcuff her. "Come with us," Carter said without a shred of compassion. Clara looked up. Her pleading gaze was directed at me, but I just shook my head. "You chose this path, Clara," I said, my voice choked. "I trusted you, but you betrayed us all." When they took her away, the hospital hallway fell silent. I hugged Benjamin, feeling the beating of his heart, the heartbeats I had feared I would never hear again. We stood there in the midst of the hustle and bustle of the medical center, but at that moment, there were only the two of us. I thought about all the years that had passed, the days I raised Benjamin alone, the dream of building a perfume brand for him, all the pain, all the sacrifices. They made sense now because I still had my son by my side. The police quickly took Clara to an impromptu interrogation room in the hospital, a small room with cold fluorescent light. Benjamin and I were taken to an adjacent observation room with a two-way mirror that allowed us to see everything without being seen. I sat down, holding Benjamin's hand, feeling the trembling in my son's fingers. He was silent, his gaze fixed on Clara through the mirror, as if he was trying to find the image of the wife he once loved. I squeezed his hand and whispered, "Son, we'll end this today." But inside, I wasn't sure if I was comforting Benjamin or myself. Clara was sitting in front of Inspector Carter, her hair disheveled and her hands cuffed on the metal table. Her head was bowed, but I could still see the sweat on her forehead. Inspector Carter began, his voice soft but sharp. "Miss Clara, we don't want to make things difficult for you. Just tell us the truth. Why did you do it?" Clara looked up. Her eyes darted back and forth. Her voice was defiant. "I didn't do anything." "You're making all of this up to hurt me." She spoke loudly, but her voice trembled as if she were trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Carter didn't respond. He silently placed a small glass bottle on the table, the same one the police had found in my kitchen. "Then what is this?" he asked. His tone was calm but full of pressure. "Salt, sugar, or arsenic?" Clara looked at the bottle, her eyes wide, but she didn't answer. She bit her lip, squeezing her hands so hard her knuckles turned white. I saw Benjamin next to me clench his fists. His breathing became agitated. "Calm down, son," I whispered, holding him by the shoulder, but I was also containing the rage that was boiling inside me. The door to the interrogation room opened, and a hospital doctor entered with some papers in his hand. "These are the results of the soup and juice samples we took from your house," he said, looking directly at Clara. "The arsenic concentration is enough to kill a healthy adult in a short time." Clara shook her head, laughing nervously. Her voice broke. "No, it can't be." "I was only giving him vitamins. Benjamin was always tired. I just wanted him to feel better." But her voice was weak, as if she didn't even believe her own words. Carter didn't let her continue. He turned on the screen on the table, and the video from the hidden camera in the kitchen appeared. The image was crystal clear. Clara standing in front of the pot, opening the small bottle, sprinkling the white powder, and then stirring quickly, pretending to add a little salt and pepper. Her face was cold, without a hint of doubt. I heard Benjamin let out a muffled sigh. He lowered his head, covering his face as if he couldn't bear to see the woman he loved in that recording. I took his hand and squeezed it without saying a word. My heart ached, but I knew it was time to be stronger than ever. "Do you have anything else to say?" Carter asked. His voice remained calm but sharp as a knife. Clara shook her head. Her eyes moved non-stop. Sweat ran down her cheeks. I don't know anything about arsenic, she stammered. Carter motioned to the officer next to him, and an audio recording was played. Clara's voice echoed in the room. Just a few more days. After that, I'll be the only one who gets everything. It was the conversation I had recorded the night before when she was whispering on the phone. Clara froze, her face pale as if she had been slapped. That's not me, she cried, but her voice no longer had strength or conviction. Benjamin, next to me, jumped up. His fists were clenched, and his eyes had reddened. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," he cried, on the verge of leaving the observation room. I quickly stopped him, hugging him tightly. "Son, let the police do their job. She can't deny it anymore." But seeing the pain in Benjamin's eyes, I knew it wasn't just anger, but a heart shattered by betrayal. The wife he had loved, the one he had trusted, was sitting there, cornered by her own actions. Carter continued, his voice unchanged. "Miss Clara, we still have something else." He placed a copy of my will and the documents of my estate on the table, pointing to the crucial part. "If Benjamin passed away first, you would be the sole heir to all of your mother-in-law's assets. You knew that, didn't you?" Clara looked at the papers with panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Carter continued, "You planned everything a long time ago, didn't you? You started with small doses of arsenic and then increased them when you heard she planned to donate her fortune to charity." Clara burst into tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. She cried out, her voice full of anger. "It's all that old lady's fault. If she hadn't announced the donation, I wouldn't have had to rush like this." That phrase was like the last stab directly to my heart. I froze, feeling my world collapse. Clara not only wanted to kill Benjamin, but she blamed me for it, as if I had pushed her to commit that crime. Benjamin hugged me. His voice trembled. "Mom, don't listen to her. She doesn't deserve for you to suffer for her." Inspector Carter nodded to the officer next to him and signed a preventive detention order right there. "Miss Clara, you will be transferred to the Central Precinct to continue the investigation," he said, without a shred of compassion. Clara broke down, covering her face and sobbing, but no one in the room was moved. They took her away. The sound of her heavy footsteps echoed in the hospital hallway. Benjamin and I remained seated, silently looking through the two-way mirror at the empty table and the folder of documents. The next morning, Benjamin and I entered the D.C. police headquarters, where Clara had been taken for her official statement. The atmosphere in the building was heavy. It smelled of old paper and cold coffee. I took Benjamin's hand, feeling the tension in his fingers. We were taken to a small room where an officer instructed us to sit as witnesses. I looked at my son. His face still showed the pain from the day before, but his gaze was firmer. "Mom, everything will end today, won't it?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded, squeezing his hand. "Yes, son. We'll put an end to this nightmare." They brought Clara into the interrogation room, separated from us by a glass wall. She sat with her head bowed, her hands cuffed, her disheveled hair covering most of her face. There was nothing left of the glamour and charm of the daughter-in-law I had once been so proud of. The silk blouse she wore was wrinkled, her eyes swollen and red, not from crying but from exhaustion. I looked at her with a mixture of anger and pain. This woman had been part of my family. She had sat at my table. She had laughed with me and with Benjamin. Now she was there like a stranger, like someone who had almost taken everything I loved away from me. Clara's public defender, a middle-aged man in a gray suit, entered the room, placed his briefcase on the table, and said in a low voice, "Miss Clara, I advise you to cooperate. The evidence against you is overwhelming." Clara looked up with panic in her eyes, but then, as if all her strength had run out, she whispered, "I'm going to tell you everything. I don't want to hide anything anymore." That sentence froze me. Benjamin, next to me, took a deep breath, clenching his fists. I put a hand on his shoulder to calm him, but I was also trembling because of what I was about to hear. Clara began to confess. Her voice was weak but clear. I researched arsenic online on hidden forums. I knew it wasn't easy to detect if small doses were used. She paused, swallowed, and continued. I bought it from a contact on the black market, a seller of illegal chemicals on the outskirts of the city. I started putting it in Benjamin's food, just a little bit every day. Listening to her chilled my blood. I clung to the edge of the table until my knuckles hurt. The image of Clara in the kitchen, sprinkling the white powder into the soup, appeared vividly in my mind. I didn't want him to die immediately, she said, her voice trembling. I just wanted him to get weak, for everyone to think it was an illness, and when he was gone, I would inherit the fortune. After that, I planned to find a way for the lady. She hesitated, looking toward the glass as if she knew I was there, for the lady to also pass away naturally. Benjamin jumped up and slammed his hand on the table. "She wanted to kill you too, Mom," he cried, his eyes reddened. I pulled him back down and hugged him tightly, whispering, "Son, calm down. She can't do anything to us anymore." But inside, I felt shattered. Clara not only wanted to take my son from me, but she had also set her sights on me, all for a boundless ambition. Inspector Carter in the interrogation room took notes carefully. He asked in a calm voice, "So what was your motive? Just the money?" Clara nodded. Tears streamed down her face, but there was no remorse. "I had nothing," she said. "I grew up in poverty. When I married Benjamin, I thought I would have a different life. But then she said she would donate her entire fortune to charity. I couldn't let that happen." I covered my face. Tears fell silently. I once thought Clara was the ideal daughter-in-law. I truly believed she loved Benjamin, but now the truth was revealed like an open wound. The police recorded the entire statement, took the official report, and Clara's public defender remained silent, unable to defend her when his own client had incriminated herself. Carter signed the arrest warrant. His voice was firm. "You will be transferred to the detention center to continue the investigation. Attempted murder is not a minor matter." Clara broke down, covering her face and sobbing, but no one in the room was moved. They took her away. The sound of her heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Benjamin and I remained seated, silently looking through the two-way mirror at the empty table and the folder of documents. A few hours later, the news spread throughout Washington, D.C. The newspaper headlines read, "Young socialite arrested for attempting to poison husband to inherit fortune." I read those words on my phone, feeling like I was living in a nightmare. The shares of the financial firm where Benjamin was a managing director plummeted, but fortunately, the board of directors acted quickly. They held a press conference, were transparent with the information, and public opinion calmed down. Meanwhile, my perfume brand was praised by the press for an unexpected decision. I turned the fake plan for the foundation into a reality, creating a foundation to protect women who are victims of domestic violence. I wanted to turn this pain into something meaningful so that no one would have to go through what Benjamin and I experienced. Benjamin, after several tests, gradually recovered his health. The traces of arsenic in his body decreased, and the doctor said he would soon return to normal. One afternoon, the two of us were sitting on the balcony of the house, watching the sunset paint the D.C. sky a deep red. Benjamin took my hand. His voice was warm. "Mom, thanks to you, I'm still alive. From now on, we won't let anyone get in the way of our family." I looked at him. I smiled, but tears welled up again. "Son, I just want you to be safe." I couldn't bear to lose you. He hugged me, and in that moment, I felt the power of a mother's love, the only thing that can never be destroyed. Looking at the sunset, I thought to myself in silence, Clara's greed had buried her, but my love for Benjamin and his for me had conquered everything. This house, the perfume brand, and all our dreams would continue to exist, not because of the money, but because we had each other. I squeezed Benjamin's hand, feeling a great relief in my heart, but also the scars that only time could heal. The story we are telling is fictional, but it is based on some real events. Names and places have been changed to protect the identity of those who were involved. We do not tell this to judge, but with the hope that someone will listen and stop to think about how many mothers are silently suffering inside their own homes. I am genuinely curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to remain silent to keep the peace, or would you dare to face everything to regain your voice? I want to know what you think because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I am leaving you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I assure you that they will surprise you.